that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Beth Gagnon. Beth is a manager of prevention and communications at Safe Passage. She has programmatic and advocacy experience from organizations such as Mutual Ground, AdventureWorks, and Opening Doors in Dubuque, Iowa. Beth previously interned with the city of Sycamore and has a bachelor's degree in sociology and public relations from Loras College. Welcome to Beth. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hi there, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay, Ben? Does this all sound good?
It sounds good to me, yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So hi there, everyone. My name is Beth Gagnon, and I am here today to teach sexual harassment prevention training. So again, I am the Prevention and Communications Manager at Safe Passage. If you would like to reach me, all of my contact information is on the screen. I'm extension 185 at that Safe Passage hotline number. And my email is bgagnon@safepassagedv as in domesticviolence.org. If you're unfamiliar with Safe Passage, I'll give a really quick overview of our services. We are DeKalb County's only domestic violence and sexual assault crisis center. We provide many different programs to help out survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. So we have emergency and long-term shelter, counseling services for domestic violence and sexual assault, legal and medical advocacy, professional training and prevention education, which is what I'm doing now, abuse intervention services, case management, and a 24/7 crisis support hotline and text line. So you can see those numbers on my screen. Again, those are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and a trained professional will always answer. You will never get a dial tone or anything like that. And those are completely free and confidential. So they're toll free, they're confidential. We don't even need to know your name. So if you ever have any questions or need support, please feel free to reach out to those hotlines and text lines that we have available. So I'm going to kind of go over our goals for today. I do like to say that this training can be a little bit triggering for some. This training can be difficult. It's a difficult topic to talk about. So please, if at any time you are feeling triggered or need a second, please take care of yourselves. Please feel free to take a little break. You can mute me if you really need to for a couple minutes. I just want to make sure that everyone takes care of themselves and stays safe. So please feel free to do that if need be. So part one, we're going to understand the legal definitions that are involved with sexual harassment. Part two is we're going to discuss some real world examples. Part three, we're going to understand the impact of sexual harassment, especially in the workplace and the workforce. Part four, I'm going to share resources and how to report. And part five, I'm going to talk about some bystander intervention. So this training is required for any workplace at all in Illinois. So I do really appreciate you all being here today. And this is all super important for creating healthy and happy work environments. So it's great to see so many people have shown up, and I am glad you're all here with me today. So why does this matter? We actually see that having happy and healthy work environments that are safe for everybody reduces turnover. So people are less likely to leave their work environments if they feel safe there. This also improves productivity. If someone feels unsafe or feels uncomfortable at work, we notice that this takes up a lot of their time, a lot of their thinking, and this can actually reduce productivity if someone feels unsafe. So if we have safe environments and we all feel comfortable, this helps with productivity. And this also reduces liability risk and costs, because if sexual harassment happens, things like that, individuals are able to sue. It can cost a lot in legal fees. Now, all of those are well and good, but what's really important is it's just the right thing to do is to create healthy, happy work environments. Actions don't have to be illegal to be unacceptable in a safe, supportive working environment. So I like to say that just following the law is kind of the bottom line. We want to be even higher than that. We want to be better than that by just doing the right thing. And so I think we have higher standards, and we should have higher standards for ourselves and the workplace than just it being illegal or not. I think we all should strive to do the right thing. So I always like to bring that up. Yes, there's lots of benefits to having a safe work environment, but also it's just about being good people. It's just about doing the right things. Who does harassment affect? Sexual harassment, like other forms of abuse, can happen to anyone. Anyone can be affected by it. Harassment is really born out of power differentials. So it's really born out of another person kind of having power over somebody else. This can happen between a supervisor and an employee. This can happen between maybe there's marginalized populations, so someone using their racial privilege, or maybe someone using male privilege, different things like that. And so marginalized populations, especially staff and clients with intersecting identities, face increased rates of harassment and difficulty reporting. So we really need to look at those power differentials, and we need to look at intersecting identities and things like that to make sure that we're really protecting everyone. But sexual harassment can happen to anybody. I think we all have this idea and picture in our head of what a survivor or a victim of harassment looks like, especially from the media, from TV, but it really can happen to anyone. So, Illinois federal laws against sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or conduct of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is explicitly or implicitly made a term or condition of employment. Submission to or rejection of such conduct is used as the basis for making decisions about your employment, and such conduct interferes with your job performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. That's a lot of words and a lot of legal jargon. This is stuff that I have to say for that requirement, but I am going to kind of dissect these pieces and go into what this really means. Because like I said, a lot of legal jargon, a lot of words, and I think sometimes it's not so clear exactly what that means. So we are going to go over that today. So there are a couple of forms of sexual harassment. There's quid pro quo and the hostile work environment. So that can be gender hostility, unwanted sexual attention, or sexual coercion. So when I go back to this other slide, this is all of these things that sexual harassment can mean, like submission to conduct is implicit of employment, such conduct interferes with your job performance. Basically, all of those bullet points go into these two different forms of sexual harassment. So when I explain those forms of sexual harassment, that's going to help make this a lot more clear. So quid pro quo, the first form of sexual harassment. So this is requests for sexual favors in exchange for employment or advancement. So this is someone saying, if you do this sexual favor for me, I will make sure that you get the job, or I will make sure you get that promotion. And so basically, quid pro quo basically means this for that. So it's a trade-off. So there are a couple high-profile cases of quid pro quo. So I think a lot of people think of like the Harvey Weinstein case. There was a bunch of things with Fox News. I think that we all have a couple cases in mind. The thing about these cases, though, is it's generally very rich white men that we see popping up in these quid pro quo cases. And a lot of times quid pro quo can be more than just it is a very rich white man. It happens between anybody, and it also can happen between maybe it's a with a client, or maybe it's between two people who are in the same employment status, but one is able to maybe help one out with another thing. So this can look like a lot of different things, even though there are many high profile cases out there. I don't want everyone to have only that one idea of what this can look like. Is there anything in the Q&A about quid pro quo? Any questions about that? Anything in the Q&A thus far, Mark?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. I am glad everyone seems to be on the same page. So next we're going to talk about the hostile work environment. So this is the second type of sexual harassment. So this is unwanted sexual conduct, even without a quid pro quo agreement or threat, that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. So this is not a this or that kind of situation. This is just unwanted sexual conduct without holding something over someone else's head, like, oh, you'll get the promotion, or oh, you'll get the job if you do this for me. So the hostile work environment is kind of has a couple categories. So it can be unwanted sexual attention. It can also be gender hostility, so sexist harassment or gender policing. So this does not require a quid pro quo threat. So when we're talking about gender hostility, that can be maybe always assuming that the woman in the office is going to make the coffee, or maybe we say the man in the office has to pick up the boxes and has to do all the heavy lifting. So these are different forms of gender policing that we can see in a work environment that is still a form of sexual harassment. Sexist harassment as well is maybe you always call the female in the office honey or sweetie. Those are different forms of sexist harassment. If you would not call any other coworker who's maybe male honey or sweetie, you should not be calling. I mean, that's kind of inappropriate in a work environment anyways, but that's kind of a form of sexist harassment I think we see the most, is name calling, pet names, things like that, that really are not appropriate for a work environment. So some forms of unwanted sexual attention that you possibly would see in a work environment is maybe unwanted touching or groping, sexual comments or compliments. I like to say compliments in that quotations because sometimes people make them seem like a compliment, like, oh, that outfit looks really sexy on you, or oh, your body looks really good in that outfit. Those seem like compliments, but they make someone feel very uncomfortable, and those are very sexual compliments, as opposed to saying your outfit looks nice today. This person decided to say your body looks good in that outfit. Those are two very different compliments. One is sexual harassment and the other is a pretty normal generic compliment. So I like to say compliment in quotes because it's not really a compliment, it's harassment. Asking inappropriate questions or sharing inappropriate stories or jokes. There's a time and place for everything. I think that when you ask inappropriate questions, share inappropriate stories or jokes, the workplace is not the place to do so. If you have friends with people outside of work, that's great. If you hang out with coworkers outside of work, awesome. But those kinds of things are not appropriate for in the office, I would say. Sharing sexual images or videos. There is always that one person who has the sexy fireman poster or the sexy fireman calendar in their office. That is a form of sexual harassment, especially, if it makes people uncomfortable. Again, there's a time and place for everything, and the office is not the time or place for the sexy fireman calendar. Sexual banter or flirtation, and more. So there are a lot of different examples of the hostile work environment for unwanted sexual attention. I could not in my entire life come up with every single example of this. There are so many. So just keep in mind that this can look like a lot of different things, but if it makes you or someone else feel uncomfortable, that's probably a pretty good indicator that this could be sexual harassment in the workplace. Any questions on that so far, Mark?
Doesn't look like any are in there yet. I'll let you know if there is any that come in.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. I always like to double check, so I want to give people the chance. Questions, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. I love questions, so I am ready for that. So next, let's look a little bit at that sexist harassment I talked about earlier. So this can be sexist behaviors that are not necessarily sexual in nature. So asking people of only one gender to take notes or make coffee, derogatory comments towards working mothers, sexist nicknames like sweetheart, hun, honey, sweetie. So all of those things are inappropriate for the work environment, and they may not be, again, sexual in nature, but this is still a form of sexist harassment, a form of sexual harassment in general. There a lot of times we hear derogatory comments towards working mothers, like who's taking care of your child right now? Maybe they say like, again, who's taking care of your child right now? Maybe they say, well, don't you want to be at home? Or are you going to come back to work after you have your baby? All of those things are pretty sexist comments. I would recommend avoiding those. Asking, maybe only the woman in the office to make coffee, take notes, treating that individual like maybe a secretary or an administrative assistant, even though that is not their job title, then that's very, very inappropriate. That is another form of sexist harassment. Again, it would take me a very long time to come up with every single example ever of sexist harassment. But these are a few of, I think, the most common ones that we see. Gender policing, reinforcing traditional gender norms in the workplace. So policing appearance, so saying that if we say we dress business casual at work, well, are women allowed to wear pants? Are men not allowed to wear skirts? So if we're policing the way that individuals have to appear in a gendered way, clothing has no gender. It's fine to say, oh, you need to dress business casual, or you need to dress formal, or you can dress casual. That is fine. That has nothing to do with gender. But if we're starting to say that, oh, all the women have to wear skirts, or all the men have to wear pants, they can't wear skirts, that is a form of policing gender in the work environment, and that creates a hostile work environment. Gendered nicknames, again, sweetie, hun, there's a lot of different ones out there. Invasive questions, so basically if someone maybe comes off as gender neutral, if we're asking questions about their body parts, if we're asking questions, if someone is transgender, if we're asking them, where are you in your transition? Those are all inappropriate questions to be asking in the work environment. Again, there's a time and place for a lot of things, and the work environment is not the time or place to be asking those questions, or really asking those questions at all about transitions unless you're very, very close with that individual. And also assigning jobs by gender. So I talked about this earlier when I said if you have very few men in the office and you say, oh, the men always have to move the boxes because they're a man. That is another form of harassment, hostile work environment. So we don't want to assign jobs by gender. I do have an example of this. I was teaching this at a nursing school one time, and they came up with a really good example that there are not a whole lot of men nurses. So they noticed that whenever there is a male nurse, that individual was always asked to push the gurneys. Every individual who's a nurse there has the ability to push a gurney, but they always would ask the male nurses to do so. And they were like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So sometimes these are things that we don't mean to do. They don't necessarily have bad intentions, but we need to start really being more intentional about what we're doing. We need to start thinking about these things because it can cause harm later. And again, it creates those hostile work environments that people don't feel safe in. All right. So, unwanted behavior. Sexual conduct becomes sexual harassment when the behavior is unwelcome. So, sometimes there are relationships within the workplace. Sometimes people date, get married, so on and so forth. So, you really shouldn't be having sexual conduct in the office. Public displays of affection in the office are typically looked down upon, but I don't know your workplaces. But it's when those behaviors are unwelcome that we really, really have an issue. So sexual conduct that is there, it becomes that harassment when the behavior is unwelcome. So that is kind of that important defining factor of when we have sexual harassment. Unwanted behavior is behavior that's unwelcome, uninvited, or undesirable. Welcome behavior can very quickly become unwelcome. And consent can be revoked at any time. So consent, I like to say consent is continuous. It is something that you need to have the entire time, and something that, oh, I was okay with us making some jokes last week. That was funny. That was fine. Those sexual jokes were funny at the time, but maybe you went too far this time. Or maybe they happen so often that now I'm uncomfortable. So that's what's really important, is that we know that just because something was okay the first time doesn't mean it's okay every single time. And just because someone was okay with something last week doesn't mean that they're okay with it this week. So it's really important to check in with people. I always like to say, when in doubt, just don't do it. There's, like I said, a time and place for so many of these things. So I really just don't think the work environment is a great place to be making jokes, to having to have sexual conduct and behavior. So when in doubt, I would say just avoid all of those activities, avoid those jokes, avoid that kind of stuff. But any welcome behavior that's there can quickly change to unwelcome. Just check in with people. That's what's really, really important. So I often have people ask, what can I do? If I see this, what do I say? What do I do? So if you experience, witness, or become aware of unwelcome sexual conduct, know that you have the right to tell the person to stop. So that's really, really important. You do have the right to tell people to treat you how you want to be treated in the work environment. And you have the right to report sexual harassment. So there are a lot of different ways you can report, which I will go through, of course. I always like to recommend that the first step is to go to your HR person, and they have lots of policies and procedures in place for that. There is also retaliation protections. A lot of people feel afraid to tell someone stop or to report sexual harassment because they think there may be retaliation. So there are protections for that, though. If the person continues the behavior or retaliates against you because you ask them to stop, they can be found to have violated the law by engaging in sexual harassment or retaliation. So the law that covers sexual harassment also covers retaliation. So if there's a quid pro quo thing going on and you say no, you can't be fired for that. You can't not receive a promotion because of that, or anything of that nature. If you ask someone to stop making jokes or comments or sexual behavior that's unwanted, and that person retaliates against you, that is still against sexual harassment laws. So there are protections for retaliation. So the responsibility of the employer. So if you're a supervisor on this call or a manager, this is for you. Supervisors and members of management are responsible for knowing the employer's internal complaint investigation and resolution process. So again, what are your HR policies? What do you do internally to take care of this? Supervisors can help affect immediate positive change. So the quickest way to make change is internally. So human resources, they're the quickest way, because if we're going to complain to the state or federally, that takes some time. So this is the quickest way to get a resolution. Human resource officers or other designated sexual harassment reporting officers can work with management to investigate and resolve sexual harassment complaints. So again, if you have human resources available, or maybe you have someone who's kind of takes care of all the employment responsibilities, talk to that person. If you're a supervisor, figure out what your HR policies are. It is your responsibility to know those things. This option may be preferred if the perpetrator of the sexual harassment is a supervisor or manager. So it is really, really important that we work on this stuff internally as well, to kind of quickly come to a resolution, quickly get that person safe. Like I said, this is going to be your quickest response time. Just checking my time here. So I do like to mention, though, that not all the time, this doesn't work out all the time. Sometimes it does not work internally, or maybe the resolution is not what you wanted to see, or maybe the resolution is not working, the HR policies aren't working, maybe your workplace doesn't take you seriously. There are different places that you can contact. These are some really important numbers to know. So the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment, their number is 800-669-4000. You can just look that up on the internet as well. There's also the Illinois Sexual Harassment and Discrimination Hotline. So that is for the state of Illinois. That is 877-236-7703. Again, you can look that up on the internet. The Illinois Department of Human Resources is www.illinois.gov/DHR, as in Department of Human Resources. And then also Safe Passage, of course. You know, our hotline is 815-756-5228, and we're at Safe Passage DV as in domesticviolence.org. We can point you in the right direction. So if you ever have questions, or maybe you're like, is this sexual harassment? Is this abuse? You can call our hotline at any time. Again, that's completely confidential. So we don't need to know your name, your workplace, your number. We don't need to know anything about you to be able to help you. And those are domestic violence and sexual assault trained professionals who answer the phone. So if you're wondering, is this sexual assault? Is this harassment? How do I report this? What do I do? Feel free to give us a call and we can connect you with some of these resources and we can help you out. So reporting abuse. You can report sexual harassment internally through HR, right? Considerations for staff, the chain of command for reporting. So maybe do you go to your supervisor first? Do you go to HR first? Do you go to the executive director? Who do you go to first? And then also you have protections from retaliation. And just remember, reports are a chance to fix a problem. You're helping, not hurting your organization by making a report. Again, having safe and healthy work environments actually helps work environments be better. It creates less turnover. It helps with productivity. So you are actually helping out the entire work environment by making a report. You are not hurting the work environment. You're actually giving your organization a chance to fix a problem. So it is really important to report these things, and it makes it a better, safer place for everyone. So I'm going to go into, for the last couple of minutes, bystander intervention, and then we'll have some Q&A. So bystander intervention is kind of the idea of, if you see something, say something. Harassment persists not because it isn't noticed, but because it is tolerated. So we need to create work environments where it is unacceptable to harass somebody or have sexual harassment. It is our duty as community individuals to create an environment that we want to live in, that we want our kids to live in, right? So we want to make sure that we are being good bystanders, that if we see something going on, we say something about it. And I am going to give you 5 different ways that you can do this. It's called the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. So as you can see on the screen, we have direct, distract, delay, delegate, and document. So the first one for bystander intervention is direct. And how you approach this one is, it's super simple. You just be direct. You go up to someone and you say, hey, I saw that. That was kind of messed up. Can you not do that again? Or, hey, I think you're making that person uncomfortable. Or maybe you say, hey, that's actually, maybe you're gender policing a little bit. That's actually a form of sexual harassment. We can't do that. Or maybe you say, hey, we don't make jokes like that here. So this is us being very direct with the person and just saying exactly what the problem is. I like to say that this is a really good method with your friends or people you know really well. Maybe these are coworkers that you know really well. This is a really good method because you feel comfortable with that person and maybe you have a good enough relationship to just kind of directly say that. A lot of times I like to address the behavior and give them a chance to correct it and then move on. So you can just say, hey, I don't think that joke was appropriate for this work environment. And then just move on and just keep an eye out, stay vigilant for more behaviors like that. But we can just do a quick correction. They learn from it. We move on, and we all make mistakes. We all say things sometimes that we're not supposed to say. We all, put our foot in our mouths. So sometimes we do just need a quick reminder and we can learn from that. So that's why this one is a really, really good method. The next one is distract. So distraction is a great method for a stranger or maybe someone you don't know. So let's say you are out at a grocery store and you can see someone's really uncomfortable. Well, a great method for distract is to go up to that person and say, hey, do you know where the cereal is? I just can't find it. So what you're doing is you're kind of getting into that situation and you're distracting, you're pulling the person away and saying, hey, can you show me where the cereal is? Another good one is maybe someone is being harassed on a bus and maybe someone's standing too close to another person. You can go up to the survivor or the victim and say, hey, I just don't know where, what stop it is for Green Street. Did you know what line I need to get off of? So we're creating a distraction. When I teach students, I like to say, oh, if you see a couple fighting in the hallway, someone looks uncomfortable, just drop your books. Make a fool out of yourself. That's fine. If you're saving someone by making a fool out of yourself, I think it's great. So yeah, just drop all your books in the hallway in front of them and go, oops, so sorry. You're giving that other person a chance to get out of that situation by creating a distraction. So again, this is really great for strangers. The next one is delay. Delay is a really good one if you maybe do not feel safe intervening in a situation. I always like to tell individuals that you should not put yourself in danger by trying to help, because then you actually might make the problem worse, because now someone needs to go in and help you too. So please only do what you feel safe doing. Delay is where the situation happens, someone is uncomfortable, someone's being harassed. Go up to the survivor or victim after the fact later and check in with them and say, hey, I saw that. That was messed up. Are you okay? How can I help? This does two really good things. One, it offers them help after the fact, and you can help them report it, things like that. Secondly, this helps kind of validate their experience. A lot of times when we see, this is similar to when we talk about microaggressions and things like that. A lot of times when there's different microaggressions, the person will doubt themselves. Sometimes I'll receive a sexist comment and I say, did that really just happen? Like, we're in 2023. Like, am I overreacting? Did I misread them? And so basically I'm gaslighting myself. And I think it's really important we validate a person's experience and say, yeah, that was messed up. I saw that. Do you want help reporting that? So that's why delay is a really, really good method. Fourth one is delegate. This is really, really good if you are maybe a staff person, maybe you're new, maybe you just don't feel comfortable. Delegate it to someone whose job it is to care. If I see someone getting harassed in a Walmart or something, I may go up to an employee and say, hey, like, there's something going on over there. Can you take care of it? Or maybe if I'm a staff member and there's something going on and I'm noticing it, maybe I'll go to my supervisor and say, hey, I noticed this. Maybe you should go take care of it. So we're delegating it to someone who maybe is above us for being a supervisor, or maybe it's an employee of a place if we don't work there. So we're going to delegate it to someone who maybe has more authority in that situation. A lot of times if I teach students, I like to tell them, go tell your teacher. Right? So just someone maybe who has a little bit more authority, who maybe can handle the situation better, especially if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe addressing that situation. And lastly, we all have these, right? Document. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull out your phone and take a video, or you're going to pull out your phone and type in the notes section, type down everything that's happening. But we're documenting the situation in some way, shape, or form. And this is not to share on social media. I like to say this over and over again. I'll say it again. This is not to share on social media. I know a lot of times we'll go on there and see, oh, this fight broke out, or oh, this person hit another person with their car, or crazy things like that end up on social media all the time. And I can't imagine being assaulted or harassed and being so scared and feeling so violated and having that moment in my life being posted on the internet for everyone to see. That would be horrifying to me. So if you do document these things, you don't share it on social media. What you do with it is you go up to the survivor or victim after the fact and you say, hey, I caught this on video. What do you want me to do with it? Do you want me to send it to you? Do you want me to go with you to the police? Do you want me to go with you to HR, the supervisor? Do you want me to delete it? What do you want me to do with it? And if they ask you to delete it, delete it. If they want you to send it to them, okay, go ahead, do so. If they want you to take it to HR with them, the police, whoever, great. So just whatever the survivor wants, do that. But again, for the last time, I'll say it one more time, don't post it on social media, please. Posting a moment that is so vulnerable and hard for someone on the internet is just one of the worst things I think someone can do. So document it, go up to the victim or survivor after the fact and say, hey, I got this on video. What do you want me to do? Okay. So those are the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. If you have any questions about those or anything about bystander intervention or any of this, please put that in the Q&A. We will have a couple minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So this is kind of what I talked about before, where we kind of move on. So what's really important is we name the behavior. I noticed you doing X. Set a limit. That is not appropriate in our workplace, and move on. So, but I like the part where it says, but be mindful. So, you know, keep an eye on that person, make sure they don't do that again. But it's really important we name the behavior, call it out, say, I noticed you made this joke at the water fountain. That's not appropriate in our workplace. Calling out harassing behaviors does not have to be like a big show. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But it is important that we call out those things and we take a minute to do that. Follow steps above and intervene before the behavior becomes a legal liability. If you notice you have an employee or colleague who refuses to be redirected, take further action, right? Sometimes someone needs to be told, hey, this is not appropriate here. But what's really important is if the person continues doing so and they're not doing that redirection, then we may need to take further action, like going to HR, going to a supervisor, or maybe even calling some of those hotlines. Keys to success. So civility, creating a culture of respect. Like I said, we want to create an environment that we want to live in, that we want our kids to live in. So we need to create a culture where we all respect each other. Making reports. So abuse thrives in silence. That's how abuse continues, is that no one says anything. If it is safe to do so, make a report and help your workplace improve. So if it's safe to do so, please make that report or find a supervisor to talk to your HR. It's really important that we keep our work environment safe. And be a bystander. So again, if you see something, say something, speak up. And a lot of times I think we see things and we say, that's not my responsibility. Or we see things and we say, oh, someone else will report it. Even if you think someone else is going to report it, you report it too. Also report those things, also address those things, because if every single person in the room assumes the person next to them is going to report it or take care of it, then nobody has done anything. So it's better to have 10 people report an incident, the same incident, than to have no one. So don't just assume that someone else in the room is going to take care of it. All right, so you can contact me. Again, I'm the Prevention and Communications Manager at Safe Passage. My phone number is 815-756-5228. That is our hotline number. And my extension is 185. We offer this presentation for free for any businesses out there. I believe there's going to be another one of these happening in December through the DeKalb County Nonprofit Association. And I really did appreciate talking with you all today. Again, if you at any point are like, I'm not sure if this is harassment, or I don't know if this was inappropriate or not, or how do I handle this, you can call our hotline, or text line is on there as well, anytime. We do have 60-hour trained professionals in domestic violence and sexual assault, and someone real will always answer the phone. Someone real will always answer that text line. We don't need to know your name, don't need to know where you work, we don't need to know anything about you. And that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on the holidays. So please feel free to contact us anytime. That is what we are here for. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so I can answer some questions.
All right, thank you, Beth. We did receive a couple, and one here came through the chat. And Todd asks, are small, all-voluntary nonprofit organizations required to have a sexual harassment policy, complaint and resolution process, like you mentioned, etc.? So wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that if it is less than 50 employees, and like you said, it's an all voluntary basis, that you do not necessarily need to have a written out sexual harassment policy. It is always my recommendation to do so, though, even if it's very, very simple of just who do you go talk to, just giving your volunteers a step-by-step of who you talk to and what the process is for them, I think is really beneficial. It could be one page and it just says, go talk to Becky and you can contact her at this number, this email. It can be as simple as that. And that also not only kind of covers you a little bit, but it also sets that precedent that this work environment does not tolerate sexual harassment. It kind of shows everybody what you're looking for and that you don't tolerate those things. So, but I do not believe it's required unless you have at least 50 employees.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And Todd, it's a great question and one that's come up in the past as well. In fact, in the follow-up email that I send, I'll include a couple of resources on this point. I think Beth nailed it, where, you know, the operative word in your question is, are they required? And, you know, that requirement may not be in place, but it, you know, it really would speak to your culture, and, you know, it would be probably a best practice, or considered a best practice, to at least speak to it in some way. And so I'll share some information with you about what others are saying in that space, and also send some information about a court case in Illinois where the court basically said that compensation is not necessary for an employee to be considered an employee under employment law. And so it talks about a case where volunteers sued the organization for sexual harassment. And so just things to consider as you're thinking about your organization, and understanding that each organization is different and has different dynamics that they're dealing with. But again, I'll include those in the follow-up email. And then Beth, the other question that I got directly says, how about board members? So it's kind of related to Todd's question. There are power dynamics at play there, and generational differences. They may not even realize a comment or action is inappropriate. What recommendations do you have for educating them?
Absolutely. I think that it's really important that your board members even go through sexual harassment training. And again, it's not technically necessary or required for them to do sexual harassment training as board members, because that's more on a voluntary basis, if they're not receiving technical compensation or under that kind of lawsuit that Ben was talking about. But, you know, creating that culture, and if you have board members that are pursuing sexual harassment and they're making comments and things that they may not understand, we might just need to be direct with them. Hey, I saw you doing this. That might make people uncomfortable. Just want to let you know. We sometimes board members will want to walk up and give someone a hug. And I've had to go up and say, hey, you really should ask that person before you give a hug. Not everyone's comfortable with that. So it can be a really quick, easy, hey, that wasn't cool, let's move on. And if your board members are not willing to hear those things and are not willing to be okay with those conversations, then they maybe should not be a board member. If we want to create a cultural environment that is safe, and your board members are representing your organization, especially out in the community, you may possibly want to rethink that nomination of that board member. It's really important we have those conversations with our board members. And again, like you said, they may not mean it. They may not even know that they were doing it, and that's why it's important to have those conversations.
Great, Beth. Those are the only two questions that we received, and so we'll wrap up a little bit early. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I'm just really excited that everyone came today. It looks like we had about 81 people, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Beth, and we appreciate your time and your message today. We will offer that repeat session. We're scheduling that in December for those of you who maybe have people affiliated with your organization that weren't able to attend today, or maybe you want to encourage board members or some volunteers to attend. So you'll see more information about that later. As we mentioned earlier, we will send an evaluation by email along with today's recording. A separate email along with that certificate of completion will be sent at a later date. We're going to try to get those to you by August 1st. We encourage you to visit dcnp.org and follow us on Facebook for upcoming training and opportunities. We have a lot coming up, and so we hope you'll join us again at an upcoming DCNP event. A reminder that our annual conference is coming up, Nonprofit Day. It's scheduled for September 27th. So save the date is out there now. But this is a day-long free event for DCNP members, and we hope to see you there. The registration for that opens on August 1st, but we encourage you to mark your calendars for that and plan to attend Nonprofit Day on September 27th. Once again, thank you all for attending, and a big thank you goes to Beth Gagnon for sharing her time and expertise with all of us. Thank you so much and take care.
Thanks, guys.